Welcome back, everybody, to the Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I'm interviewing Fish Lee. He's the fastest working man in indie comics. Mr. Fish has worked on over 30 books in the last 3 years, and he's been on the scene. Yeah, I can see that. 30 books. That's incredible. He has worked on titles like the Sentinels, Fivestar, the Power Company, usually doing the pencils, inks, letterings, and colorings himself. That's a lot of work. The powerhouse of a creator is now launching his own solo series, Greenzone. I love the name, by the way. Life in the blocks through publisher Freestyle Komics. In a world full of genomes with superpowers, they are viewed as supervillains waiting to happen and must serve the greater good for 5 years to prove they are one of the good ones. Green Zones follows a group of new recruits in the police force G unit as they try to earn their citizenship. How did you get involved in this? When did it start? And tell us more, please.
Oh man, Greenzone actually hit me almost fully formed in a dream one night. And I mean, I have a lot of ideas pouring out of my head. It's one of the benefits of being born with Tourette syndrome. Our brains run really, really fast and it's constantly kicking out ideas. Some of them aren't wonderful, but like I'm very creative. And this just came to me one night. I got up, I wrote down almost the rest of it that night. I've been mulling over it for 10 years and adding to it and sculpting it and carving it and making it even better and more intricate and more complicated. And my son finally was like, look, we go to a lot of conventions and you always talk to this story to everybody at the tables around us. If you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it.
That is so true. It's true.
And I was like, yeah, I need to do that. And then I happened to finish one of the Sentinels issues really quickly. I got the whole book done in like 12 working days over a couple of weeks. And so I had the whole month scheduled to do this book. And now I'm done and I'm paid. And my wife was like, well, do something of your own. So I knocked out the first 2 issues of Greenzone, just got them almost done in that month. If we hadn't got sick at the end, I would have had it. But the first issue is done. It's at Kickstarter right now. You can go to gomrfish.com, GOMRFISH. It'll take you right there to the Kickstarter. It's doing good. I'm excited about it. I can't wait for people to see this world because it's so rich and complex. And you get to see just how far the deck is stacked against these genomes. I mean, as soon as you're recognized as a genome, you get shoved into the slums of the green zones. And the blocks are these giant overbuilt ghettos, so that people that shoot fireballs can't bust out of them. And you just live here in squalor and they forget about you. And they give you a token way out of earning your citizenship, if you serve for 5 years. But they don't tell you how hard it is to make it through 5 years and how few actually make it. And we're following this group of new recruits on their first day on the job. And you see just how different all of their lives are. Some of them have grown up alone in the blocks, scrounging for food in trash cans. Some of them have grown up very privileged and had a lot easier lives. And it's just, it's so good. You get to see people they're only here because they want to get their citizenship and get out. You see people that become like lifelong police officers and really believe if they try hard enough and they work twice as hard as a human officers, they'll break that genetic ceiling and they'll be able to get promoted. And you see, no matter how hard they work, they still don't seem to get there and things still seem to fall against them. And one little mistake and you can catch a felony charge yourself. Like one of the characters, Bellamy, is covered in these razor sharp quills all over her body. So if she just bumps into somebody on the bus, she could get a felony charge and go to prison for unlawful use of supernatural force. Because as far as the humans are concerned, she might as well have blasted them with freeze rays or something. Like she attacked them with a supernatural ability. That's against the law. She's going down. Doesn't matter that she can't help it. Like it's her body hair, but
right.
It's, I love it. I love it. Down to we're doing a source book too. I'm putting a source book together, which is like the police files on all these guys as they went through police academy training. And they're written by their human training officers. So you see just how jaded and slanted everything is against them, down to the subject, claims the scar on his stomach is from an appendectomy. Like, why would you lie about that?
You're
But
right.
no, they're violent genomes. It was probably a knife fight. He's just trying to cover it up. Like, just everything is slanted against them. And, but the world tells them, yeah, if you work hard enough, you can earn your way out. Yeah, sure. Why don't you try? And I'm hoping with this fantastical setting, people can read it and see just how unfair the situation is and maybe open their eyes a little bit to how not all of us get the same fair shake. You know, like even just living with a disability like I do, people people think, well, yeah, the building's handicap accessible. Like, you're welcome to come in. Oh, now we got to build a ramp so you can get your wheelchair in there. That costs a lot of money. Why do we have to go through all this work? Can't you figure out a way to get around it? Well, no, I can't get my wheelchair up the
Right,
stairs
right, right.
without a ramp. Okay, fine, we put the ramp in, but we didn't make a handicap accessible bathroom. So, you can't really go and you can't stay very long because you can't go to the bathroom. I mean, like, all these things that people just don't even think about, that block just me living my life from being able to get
Right.
into places and do things, much less, if you were born on the wrong side of town or the wrong skin color or the wrong religion or whatever, is stacked against you starting out. Hopefully, I'm hoping it'll help open some people's eyes by the end of things.
I hope
We'll see.
so. Yeah, I mean, I'm being a person with various disabilities. I know especially the bathroom part. Oh my, because I catheterize every 3 hours, and it's like sometimes I'm like, how am I supposed to catheterize in here when there's no sink in here and things aren't sterile and yeah, these things that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Fish, I'm interested in your creative process. Like how you mentioned dreams. Did you literally have a dream of the entire like Greenzone story, or do they compartmentalize in different dreams?
In this one, it was like 85% of the story was just right there. And it was like one scene out of it. But some of the major characters, like Bellamy covered in spikes, was there. And I knew there was this big giant genome that was really terrifying looking, but he was really scared on the inside, who ended up becoming Virgil, who's like this 8 foot tall lizard monster. He's on all the advertisement stuff for the book. You can see there's like a lineup of all the characters on the Kickstarter that you can look at. Um, but he's giant, he's terrifying, he's covered in spikes and scales, and he looks like a big scary monster. He rarely talks because it's very hard for him to speak, something else I have to deal with. It doesn't sound like it right now, but like for 15 years, my Tourette's was so bad I could hardly walk, talk, or speak most days. And I mean, I couldn't
Wow.
see. I I couldn't feed myself. It was really bad because I was just constantly thrashing and jerking and twitching, and my eyes were clamped shut, and my jaw was locked shut. Like, I know what it's like to be looked at as a monster. I know what it's like to scare people when you don't mean to, because I'm nearly 6.5 feet tall. I'm a very large guy. Like, you know, if I go walking through a parking lot after dark, women will grab their purses and take off running. I mean, like, I scare people. I don't mean to. I'm a very nice guy, but I scare people. And then you throw in the twitching and the jerking, and I can seem very scary in certain situations. And Virgil looks terrifying. He's a very sweet, kind, scared person on the inside. All he wants to do is get out of the blocks and open a little bookstore and spend the rest of his life lost in books, pretending to be anything other than a giant scary monster. But he can't do that unless he risks his life for 5 years as a cop first. And he hates the police. Like, you see in the book, you see him catch a felony charge at 5 years old because he scared the cops and they beat the fool out of him. And then they had to explain why they beat up a 5 year old. So he got charged with a felony. And, he hates the police, but he hates living in the blocks worse. And
Mhm.
so this is his chance to get out. And he's taking it. He just wants to live in peace, and he's not going to get that where he's at. And
The story is
everybody
inspiring me.
everyone thinks he's this big giant monster that you can like sick on people, and he is the kindest, sweetest person in the world. Like, he doesn't want to hurt anybody, but he looks terrifying. And Bellamy is out scared uncomfortable in her own skin. She's constantly afraid of bumping into somebody. Like you can see it in her body language. She's always unsure of herself. She's always got her elbows tucked in. Like, she just wishes she could crawl out of her skin and run away. And, something else I can identify with. And, but she can't, so she has to make the best of it. And she is not suited to be a police officer, but she's going to do the best she can because it seemed like the easiest way out, and she wants a better life than what she's got right now.
Do these characters are they overcoming any of these challenges that they're faced with, or is it constantly being challenged with what they're going through?
You're going to see some of them overcome things. You're going to see some of them throughout the storyline, which is this story is long. Like I've got at least 5-10 years worth of issues written down that I can do no problem. I'm hoping if this issue goes well, and I'm hoping by the end of this year to be switched over to just doing Greenzone and not doing all these other books that I do all the time. Because I could stay busy all day doing other people's books, but then I don't have time to tell my own. It's got to be one or the other. And so this is my shot to get out there and tell my own stories. And I think once people see them, they're going to love them. But you're going to see these characters come out of their shells. You're going to see them grow. You're going to see them suffer. You're going to see them, make it up the ladder and then get knocked back down again. You're going to see, one of them is already being viewed before they even get started as this one must be a criminal in disguise. There's just too much stacked against this person. And there are a lot of criminals, that try and get into the police force and stuff and be the inside guy. Cause you're growing up living in the blocks, you're surrounded by gangsters and stuff. Most of these blocks are ruled by gangs, and you don't really have a choice a lot of times but to be a member of it, or they'll kill your family or they'll kill your cousin or whatever. Like you don't really have a choice for the most part. And so they have a habit of trying to sneak people into the police force. One of these people in the first issue is going to get tagged from the beginning as this must be one of them, and we're going to watch him. And it doesn't matter how good a job they do, they still look guilty in the eyes of the humans because they've got to be up to something because they just don't trust them.
It sounds like an amazing movie as well. Have you thought about any type of transitioning from comics to movies, or are you thinking of staying where you're at?
I would be happy to be able to tell the story in comics for the rest of my life. I would be happy with that. I have had several friends in the indie comics world that have recently been signing deals with Netflix and stuff to turn their books into movies or animated series or things. And, I think it would be really cool to see it do that. I think with things like Virgil being an 8-foot tall lizard, I think that would be kind of hard to do in like a series all the time. It might be better as like an animated series, like a more mature animated series.
Yeah.
But I would love to see what they could do with it. I think it would make an awesome movie down the road. A friend of mine I commissioned for one of the variant covers. His picture of Bellamy is so beautiful. And it doesn't even look like his version of my character. It looks like his portrait of the actress that played her in the movie. It is so different, but so beautiful. I love it. And that's like the first time to me, it's like, I could see what this would look like in a movie now. And it's beautiful. It's amazing.
What do you want your readers to get out of your stories?
I want them to be moved. I want them, excuse me. My real goal is I want you to laugh hard when the characters laugh. I want you to weep when the characters weep. I want you to feel the heartbreak. I want you to fall in love with some of these characters just to turn around and hate them for the things that they do, but you still kind of love them. And then, fall in love with them again when their redemption comes back around. Like, I want you to feel all those complex feelings, and I want you to feel just how heavy it is when things seem so stacked against you, because a lot of people live that life every day. Like we live with chronic illnesses. it feels like the deck stacked against you every day. And it would be so easy to just give up and say, why me? And, my life is miserable and I'm constantly in pain and I can't do all of these things that I wish I could do. Or I could pick myself up every day, dust myself off every day and say, you know what, maybe I can't do those things, but I can do these things and I'm really good
Right.
at these things.
Right.
And maybe I have to do some of them a little differently than I used to accommodate my illness, but I can still do it. And, even on my worst days, like I became a Tourette syndrome advocate years ago because I spent so many days locked up in a body that would not work right, twitching and jerking. And I might only be able to get one eye halfway open and only be able to use one thumb. But that was enough for me to get on my phone and scroll through Facebook and encourage people and uplift people and tell them that it's going to be okay. Counsel with parents that just got kids that were diagnosed with Tourette's and tell them, look, it's going to be okay. Your kid's life's not over. They're going to be able to get married and have kids and do all the things that they want to do. It might be harder sometimes, but there's nothing they can't do. Most people with Tourette's aren't going to get as severe as I got. And even as severe as mine is, I've learned ways to deal with it to make things easier. I've learned the things that I have to have. I've got good medications, good treatments. I've learned that I have to get enough sleep every night. I have to eat every day. I set alarms to remind me to take lunch because I will forget. I got to get exercise. I've got to be careful of the things that I eat because certain things will set my tics off more. I've learned to live with it and to surf the waves of the tics that come and not like stand in the ocean and try and fight it, because you're going to lose every time to the ocean. You are going to get overwhelmed and drowned. But if you learn to surf it, then yeah, you have some tics, they come and they go, and you go back to your life as usual, and it doesn't have to bring everything to a crashing halt. When I try and fight it, then it builds and it builds, and next thing you know, I'm seized up on the ground, thrashing and jerking. And, you know, I have shook myself so violently so many times. I have given myself so many concussions from shaking my head over the years that just shaking my head no too hard now will give me another concussion.
Wow.
Like, I've got to be careful about what I do.
Yeah, definitely.
But I know these things, I do these things, I'm careful about them. Like, part of the reason that like I work the job I do is because I can work from my recliner, and it's easier on my back, it's easier on my legs, it's easier on my nervous system. If I'm not having to send signals out to my body to sit up straight at a desk, I get a lot less mixed signals coming out that make me twitch and jerk. If I can relax more, then I have fewer tics. Like, I've learned lots of things to work around it to help make it easier. But you can do this. But like,
When
that's
you're
how
in
I
the
became an
creative zone,
advocate.
I'm sorry, go ahead. When you became an advocate?
So that's how I became an advocate, because I literally could not do anything else but move that thumb and look at the screen. But I was like, I could still reach out to people around the world through Facebook groups and stuff. And I
Yeah.
made a whole lot of friends and encouraged a lot of people. And that brings me joy. You got to focus on what you can do. Your question.
Yeah, I'm wondering if when you're in the creative zone, does that help with the Tourette's?
A lot of times, yeah, if I can really focus on something, and with ADHD and stuff, like when I hyper focus on something, everything else will fall away and I'm good for that time that I'm hyper focused on it. Once I quit or I get pulled away or get distracted or whatever, then everything comes crashing back. And now it's like I've been holding off those tics for all this time, and now they come crashing back. And now, maybe I can't talk and I can't see and I'm twitching and I can't use my left arm. And it it can be frustrating to people in my life sometimes, because I could be sitting here working diligently for hours and not tick once. And then they're like, okay, let's go to dinner. Like, all right. I put my tablet down, I get up, and then the ticks start to hit me. And sometimes it feels like you were fine until I wanted you to do something. But I was fine because I was hyper focused on something.
Right, right, right.
And now that I'm not, all those ticks are coming back, which is okay. I will let them go through and we can go do our thing. I would much rather go out to dinner with my beautiful wife and tick doing it than sit at home ticking alone. Like, that's
Right.
fun.
Yeah,
I
right.
would rather go hang out with friends and tick and make a scene at a restaurant than sit home ticking alone. So I'm good. Yeah, let's go. I don't care what I look like. I got used to people staring at me a long time ago.
And did the creative process come when you were young, much younger? Do you feel you were born with this creative process, or did it come along later in life?
I A lot of my creativity comes hand in hand with my Tourette syndrome, because our brains run so fast
Hmm.
and everything. I've always had a whole lot of ideas pouring out of me. I've always been a storyteller. When I was a kid, that was a liar because I didn't know you could say, "Hey, I made up a story." So I would just say this stuff happened to me because I didn't know how else to do it. I didn't know you could like write down stories or,
Hmm.
things like that as a kid. So I just lied a lot. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've always had the creativity pouring out of me. I People like to look at my art now and say, "Oh, it's a God-given talent." And yes, I was the best artist in kindergarten, but that literally meant I could draw the best dragster out of a triangle and two circles. Like, because I put little squiggles at the back for dirt, that made mine better than anybody else's.
Hmm.
All the rest of my improvement has come from years and decades of hard work and study. Like when everybody else was out playing games and playing football and going to dances and stuff, I was home drawing, focusing, and learning my craft. And when other people would get home from work and chill out watching TV or playing video games, I was home working and honing my craft and studying and learning. And I still am. If I'm not working now, I am studying other stuff to learn to make me better because, I'm constantly increasing this. I've got 46 years of hard work put into this craft. And I don't like it when people shortchange that by saying it's a natural gift. I mean, the way my brain works is a natural gift. The way I can envision things in my mind is a gift. Not everybody can do that. I can see things in 3 dimensions and turn them around and move them and change the colors in my brain. Not everybody can do that. That's a gift. But the skill to be able to put that on the page, that's hard work. That is a
Oh, yeah.
craft that I learned. It's
Super
a
duper
skill
hard
that I've
work.
mastered. Oh, absolutely.
What skill do you find yourself still working on to this day?
I am amazed. Every comic book that I do, every time they cut me a check for it and I finish it and they're happy with it, I am amazed anybody pays me to color. I am still expecting every book I do, I expect them to be, "Hey, wait a minute, you're not really a colorist," and take the money back. But they keep paying me to do it. And some people pay me just to color things.
Wow.
I, as a kid, I loved black and white comics because they were the independent comics, and that's where weird stuff happens. Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, was
I
just a
love
weird
Teenage
idea
Mutant Ninja Turtles.
in a tiny little indie book, and then it took over the world. But that weird stuff happens on the outskirts. And so I love black and white. All I ever wanted to do as a kid was draw indie comics. So I studied grayscale and halftones and crosshatching and all this stuff to do the kind of comics I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And now with digital printers and print on demand services, like if you wanted to make a comic of your own, you could write it, illustrate it, full color. You could send it off to Kablam in Florida. They'll print you one copy for like $3 and you could turn around and sell it for 5. I mean, it is amazing the world we live in today. No longer do you have to do 5,000 or 10,000 print run just to get a printer to even
Mm.
bother making your books, which takes a big investment, which was a
Yeah.
big barrier for a lot of people. But now you can do one book, you can do 3 books, you could run a Kickstarter to pay to do a print run of 500 and, sell them, give them out to the backers, and then you've got 400 left or 300 left that you can sell at conventions and stuff, however you want to do it. But it's never been easier to do it, and that's amazing. But the fact that I get paid to color it all amazes me because I literally just taught myself how to do stuff in color like 10 years ago. Compared to all my other skill sets, that's fresh. Like that is brand new compared to inking and penciling and the stuff that I've been working on since I was in grade school.
And when it comes to coloring, are these in like I guess the word that wanted to come out was inherent. Are there like inherent feelings that you have while you are coloring, like this is gonna look good here, or this is gonna make this stand out more, or this is gonna give this character more? Or do you go let's say somebody commissions you, do you have to be as specific as they make it, or can you be creative on your own and make it even more?
It depends on who you're working with. One thing that I have found oftentimes, especially in small independent comics, small little single guys that are writing their books and hiring artists to do it, and they publish 1 or 2 books a year, like the little bitty guys. A lot of times they will have very specific colors picked out. This is her skin color, this is her hair color, this is the color of her suit, and it needs to be that color in every panel on every page. And they will check every single spot, and if it's not right, they will fuss at you and make you change it. They're trying to keep the quality up. They want to make it look as good as they can. They're not understanding that to really make it look as good as we can, sometimes those colors have to change depending on the scene that you're in. Like if this character is suddenly underwater and everything is blue shifted, then, maybe a green would make a better skin color for her and look right in the scene
Mm-hmm.
instead of the particular shade of brown that you picked. If I pick the right green against that blue background, it will look like it's her brown skin underneath the water with the blue light on it. But no, 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 no. It has to be the color I picked, and that's not the color I picked.
Wow.
And that's they're trying to do good, but they don't understand that they're hurting themselves in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of times that my colors are throttled, they're held back a little bit, and they're more old school comic book type colors because I have to keep these characters that they want the exact same color in every scene. So all the scenes have to be brighter and, simpler color schemes like a comic from the 80s, as opposed to something you might pick up on the newsstand now that has much more complicated coloring to it. And I like the old school stuff too, which is fine. I have fun with it. One of the books that I do all the time is designed to look like it's from the 80s. And so I have a lot of fun with that. I have a lot of fun with the limitation of the color palette that I have to work with. And that's awesome. That's fun too. My book, Greenzone, I'm going with a much flatter color scheme with not as much shading and highlighting and making it all super complicated and super textured. I want it to be simpler and grittier because this is a police story. And, I want this to play out and feel a certain way, not be a bigger than life flying through the stars kind of superhero story. This is about cops. I mean, yeah, they live in a world with superpowers. They live in a world with giant aliens and cyborgs and guys running around in mech suits robbing banks. Like, they live in a fantastic world, but we're following the cops on the street, the guys that are doing crowd control while you're fighting the giant aliens, the guys that are trying to save people out of the cars that got crushed by the guy in the mech suit robbing the bank. Like, they're dealing with all the aftermath and trying to keep people safe and trying to keep themselves alive while all this is going on. And I want that to have a more grounded feel and not a fantastical, we're flying through the cosmos kind of feel. And, colors play into that.
So how can our viewers, our listeners, and our watchers find your incredible Greenzone? How can we find it? It's out now on Kicks. I mean, you want to go ahead and
Yeah,
give us your
it
information?
is on Kickstarter right now. It is gomrfish.com, GOMRFISH. And that short link will take you right there to my Kickstarter. Once the Kickstarter is done, it will take you right to the shop where you can buy it. And when the next Kickstarter comes on, it will take you right back to the new Kickstarter. So that's the only one you got to remember. If
Go,
you want to
Mr.
follow
Fish.
me, yeah, gomrfish.com. Nice and easy. And if you want to follow me, it's Mr. Fish Comics everywhere else. I'm on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I do a lot of time lapse art on TikTok, and you can watch me work on the art and talk about the characters and talk about the stories of Greenzone and stuff. I also give out a lot of advice for new artists and stuff because I realized I have a lot of experience in this business. I've been working in graphics for years.
Oh
I've
yeah.
been working and making a living doing art since high school. And I've learned a lot over the years. And a lot of times it amazes me. I get some amazing jobs that got, that like former Marvel artists and stuff have gotten passed over for just because they didn't return emails or they didn't respond, to
Right.
questions. Just simple things like returning your emails, keeping clients updated, even if it's bad, even if I have to say, I'm sorry, my Tourette's has been bad for 2 days. I haven't been able to get any work done. I apologize. I'm going to try and start over on Monday. It sucks to tell a client that, but better to tell them that than to just be silent for a week and they
Right.
don't know what's
Totally.
going on.
Yeah.
And, and everybody has been understanding and, it's works a lot better that way than keeping them in the dark.
Yeah. Honesty
And
is the best policy, right?
oh, absolutely. And things like my whole first series on TikTok, I did like 12, 15 episodes just on don't spend the money until the job is done. I don't care what it is. Like there's certain excuses, like if you have to buy paint for a mural, that's one thing. But otherwise, don't spend the money until the job's done. If you cannot afford a cup of coffee at Starbucks without dipping into the money from a job you haven't finished, hard truth, you can't afford a cup of coffee. Make a cup of Sanka at home or something. I don't
Right.
care. Don't spend that money. If something goes wrong, you can return it and it will keep you driven. It'll keep you working. You'll get the job done. Then you can have the money. Then you go to Starbucks, but not before.
I love it. I'm gonna check it out. I just barely got into TikTok, just barely about a month ago. So I'm gonna start following. I'm gonna check it all out.
Oh, yeah. A friend of mine who's another small press indie guy, he got on there and suddenly he had like 50, 60,000 followers. And I was like,
Jeez.
you know what? I need to check this out.
Yeah, right.
And it's all a matter of finding like what you have to offer the audience. And I thought it was all just teenagers doing silly dances, but there's so many artists and writers. And I love following writers on there from like novelists to screenplays to, TV show writers, because they've all got this interesting advice on like how to make your villains, more interesting and more relatable. And how would you, what's the difference between, mystery and suspense and all this stuff in short little nuggets that are easy to consume. I love it.
Yeah, I'm so far loving TikTok. I really am. It's a whole other world, and you could just go down that rabbit hole for hours, and it's
Yeah, you can. That's the one thing I have to be careful of because like every time I go to post a TikTok, like it takes, a
yeah,
minute or so for it to load.
right
And
then.
next thing I know, I just lost an hour because
Yeah.
I'm scrolling through TikTok. I have to be very careful about that.
Mr. Fishley, everybody, go MrFish.com, Mr. Fish Comics, Fishley, the Greenzone, check it out. He's amazing. I can't believe you've been doing this your whole life pretty much. And I look forward to following you and interviewing you again to see what you're doing, where you're at in about 6 months.
Thanks, man. I'm excited. I cannot wait for the response when people read this because so far everybody, in my circle that has read this has gotten so excited. They're suddenly like writing stories for me and writing voiceovers and all this stuff. They just can't help but start creating things for this world. And that's what I hope somebody out there can get as inspired by this as like I was as a kid by Star Wars and He-Man and Thundercats and all this stuff that got my imagination going. To be able to do that for other people is an awesome feeling. It gives me goosebumps. I love it.
Well, you've definitely pumped me up. Thanks so much for being on A Little Less Fear podcast, Mr. Fishley, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.